Humanity is at a crossroads with one of the biggest, preventable, global public health crises that we have ever faced. Here, in the United States, we call it the invisible disability because it's hidden in plain sight. But it's time we lift the mask. What is FASD? FASD stands for Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder. This happens when a fetus is exposed to alcohol while in the womb, causing permanent brain damage to the unborn child. Modest estimations from experts place 1 in 20 people with an FASD. This means
all of us know someone with an FASD. There are sisters, our brothers, our neighbors, our nieces, our cousins, our parents. FASD impacts us all.
There's a common misconception out there that early alcohol exposure in pregnancy isn't harmful. You hear people saying, drink till it's pink, meaning it's okay to drink until you know you're pregnant. Unfortunately, it's not true. In fact, some of the most fundamental development occurs in that early stage, that time before a woman's even capable of having a positive pregnancy test.
About 40 to 50% of pregnancies are unplanned. So you know that there's a tremendous amount of alcohol that it can be consumed before someone even has a confirmed pregnancy.
Wasn't aware I was pregnant. You know, we talk about unplanned pregnancies in the FASD field. I had an unplanned pregnancy.
We've got doctors still telling us it's okay to drink alcohol. My doctor, I had 2 pregnancies. My doctor didn't ask me a thing about alcohol.
I think the biggest issue there is we need to have screening in place, but to do that, we need to meet people where they're at, and we need to have providers that are willing to ask the hard questions because there is such a stigma still around prenatal alcohol exposure.
both the amount of alcohol and timing of exposure can determine the severity of an FASD in the affected baby. This is because alcohol is considered the most damaging substance to a developing fetus, more damaging than any other substance.
And I have never met a mother that had any intention of hurting their baby.
I would say no safe amount of alcohol ever during pregnancy or during breastfeeding.
After birth, a baby with an FASD is faced with lifelong adversity due to the multitude of mental and physical health issues that result from alcohol exposure. It is referred to as a lifelong sentence because individuals with an FASD can never outgrow or cure this disability.
These individuals do not have to be born with the disabilities that they live with, and it's permanent disabilities. It is lifelong.
For most children with an FASD, early care and interventions are next to impossible. This is because diagnosing FASD is complex and inaccessible to most.
How can we get this awareness out to not just women of childbearing ages, but to the community at large, to employers, to the liquor outlets, to restaurants, to grandparents, whoever will listen to it, so there is an understanding.
I came to a website on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and I had no idea it was a spectrum disorder. And as I'm reading that and I'm looking at and I'm seeing that you don't have to have the facial features, and I'm looking at the list of symptoms, and she has almost every one of them. I guarantee you that you have friends and family in your life who are on the fetal alcohol spectrum and maybe are undiagnosed or misdiagnosed with other things.
I'll hear people say, I drank and my child's fine. And we know that there are so many dynamics that play into an FASD, and it's not just the alcohol. But when you think of the 450 conditions under the FASD umbrella, it's like, are you sure your child's okay?
Fetal alcohol spectrum disorders are not just diseases of, if you will, underrepresented minorities, Native Americans, and those with low socioeconomic status. That is one of the biggest misconceptions in regards to it. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, similar to other, if you will, conditions, affects the entire population, including the majority.
Even for children who receive an accurate diagnosis early on, there are little to no resources or special training available within our public education system.
I guess people just didn't understand it, and they didn't really want to try and understand it, which I think is a huge thing, is just wanting to learn about the struggles that your students face. And I think that that's hard when you have 500, 600 students in a school.
%60 of people with FASDs have issues, have trouble with the law at some point. Out of that group, 35% end up going to jail. And if you look at the reasons for that, you can understand some of the symptoms are like sensory issues, having difficulty with executive functioning, understanding consequences.
I got that a lot because I thought I was a bad kid, but I was just hyperactive and I didn't know how to express myself. I still don't, but like, we're not bad kids. You just have to be patient with us.
The lack of awareness, training, and resources within our education system fails these children, which can lead to substance use problems, mental health challenges, and is often a gateway into our legal system.
I don't want to suggest that your children should be immune from prosecution. That's not the case at all, or immune from arrest. If they get in trouble, they have to face consequences, but the consequences should not be the same as a person who has no cognitive impairment.
There is no current statistical data on U.S. prison numbers and FASD. However, in Canada, 31.2% of incarcerated adults have FASD. If we conservatively applied that same number to the U.S. prison population, that would mean the U.S. government spends an estimated $22.2 billion per year on imprisoning individuals who have an FASD. FASD is unseen and unrecognized by the majority of our society. This truth carries a profound economic impact.
I think that we can demonstrate that through structure and through sentencing alternatives, we can save taxpayers money by not incarcerating this population, but by giving them services and making sure that they have structure in their lives. A job, a roof over their heads, and something to focus on outside of your employment. That's something that everyone with FASD needs.
For the first time in a long time, this is my home. When I was at my other group home, I didn't call it home because I didn't want to go back. But now, this house, I know I belong here now. It's one of the best places I've ever been.
I just wish this wasn't the only one. I'd like to encourage more people to start, like have a group home for people with autism only, have a group home for people with Down syndrome only, dementia, you name it. Because there are times where if you take all the disabilities and put them in one house, it's hard to communicate with each other.
Currently, there are very few resources for families and individuals with FASD at the federal or state levels. Without the needed supports, individuals with FASD show up with astounding prevalence in our legal systems, sex trafficking rings, and homelessness. Because of the difficulties related to diagnosing, experts all agree the prevalence of this disorder is profoundly larger than current statistical data would show.
In 2010, the Department of Human Services issued a report really recognizing FASD as a crisis in our state. More than 9,000 children are born every year in Illinois that are FASD, and that is a low number because we know that based on a difficulty in making a diagnosis, that number has to be exponentially higher. I think it's probably 30, 40,000 children born every year in Illinois with FASD.
FASD isn't only difficult for the individual, but the challenges associated are life-altering for their family, guardians, and caretakers.
It went to the point where me and my mom we could barely stand to be in the same room with each other without her wondering what it is that I'm doing and if I'm doing the right thing. And we would just constantly get into fights, and sometimes I still beat myself up over it.
I can't do this anymore. I don't know what we're gonna do. I don't know where we're gonna go. I don't know what we're gonna do. And when I'm like that, she's lost because I'm hurt. I'm her stone, I'm her tether, you know, to what do I need? Mom will help. And I always have, but I felt like I couldn't.
It's hard too, as a mother, feeling that you're not doing what it was needed to be doing for your, you know, are you good enough? Have you done what you can?
We need constant support and emotional support and sometimes physical support. But if you see a kid with disabilities, you can't just be like, oh, there's that kid. There's that freak. There's that mistake.
The crux of this public health crisis is that it is preventable.
It's a real disease that is preventable.
FASD is preventable.
FASD is preventable.
It is largely preventable.
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 This is the crossroads we find ourselves at.
I think if we start to focus on the pregnant woman and the pregnancy as being this precious, special event process, then I think we will start to apply the proper value to what would make that special process safe and protected and to have the best and healthiest outcome.
Here in the US, we deserve to know the truth around alcohol and pregnancy. Once we have that truth, it will take all of us to support those living with FASD and to support women in pregnancy.
FASD is an unavoidable issue. It's inescapable. Its effects are far-reaching through our American landscape. There are millions of individuals and families struggling in the U.S. from this preventable disability. And collectively, we have overlooked this issue for far too long. Resources are needed for those living with FASD. They deserve a better life. And those who have no voice need our protection, our future unborn children. Awareness of FASD is the only route to end the struggle. Every person can help this cause by knowing what FASD is and who it impacts. And that's all of us.
Every state, every town, every place in the world needs to understand that FASD doesn't just affect the people with it or their parents or whatever. People with disabilities can do great things. We just need to be shown that we do matter. We can do all these things.
Always remember the lasting impression you can make on me and people like me. And we can leave with you. Thank you for leading.
It's time to act. Join the movement at the FASD Project and be a part of the awareness and change that is needed.